Hey everybody, if you're watching this video, we asked Kevin and Bill from Sterile Safe Solutions to join us and do a short overview of their technology. Now, if you're watching this video, you should have signed an NDA with us. If you haven't yet, please push stop, get the NDA from me, sign it, and then keep watching. You should not have received it without that. This is a very technical, very competitive arena, and there's a lot of buzz about what they're doing. So ultimately, and I'll turn the time over to Kevin and Bill and let them introduce themselves and get into how the technology works. But ultimately, we're talking about ESG and IAQ, indoor air quality. This is a real hot topic these days, especially coming on the heels of COVID. If you have a technology that can literally depathogenize a building, kill all the pathogens in the building, and improve the indoor air quality, and in the process lower costs for that organization, so it'll pay for itself. These days, with some of the statutes and the legislation that's passing, local law 97 in New York and so forth, they're requiring buildings and property management managers and so forth to raise the bar and become carbon neutral and meet these requirements. And if not, they're going to be fined. There's heavy fines coming. And so goes New York, so goes the rest of the country. Usually California will follow, and others, and so forth. But Sterile Safe Solutions has a solution. It has an answer to these concerns. How do you make your building safe? How do you improve the air quality? How do you lower costs? This technology combines all of these into one, and one approach. I said there's several pieces to it, but then on top of it, with all the legislation that's passing and so forth, and the concern about it, they're passing tax credits that can reimburse the company a large percentage, if not all, of their expense. We've heard as much as 2.5 times what they've spent, they can get back in tax credits. So it's really, not only is it a concern for businesses, but it is an absolute no-brainer. So that's kind of my two bits, just from a 10,000-foot view. I don't know. You guys can tell me how I did.
That was fantastic. We're going to have you open every meeting. I think we can
Well,
all go home now.
we'll record this and get NDAs and share it with who we can. But so Kevin Winburn, you're what is your official title?
I am the janitor. I am the part-time cook. I am also the president of Sterile Safe Solutions. And
Head cook and bottle washer, huh?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. We wear many hats around here. We bootstrapped the company. Haven't had to raise any money. Have been fortunate in other ventures to where we've really been able to put in some very serious sweat equity into what we're doing. So there's the folks that we're bringing out or in from out in the field. We can offer and extend a fairly lucrative compensation plan after we kind of share what the pieces and parts of our program are. It's
Right.
it's important to understand that the technologies have been around for a while. They're very innovative, but I think our key differentiator is the way in which we engineer them, and we engineer the program, and we engineer the system to align with some of those tax credits and various cost savings. It's actually a lot like what solar went through. You go and you have solar installed on your roof. Your bill drops from $300 down to $80, and we're using a similar media, right? Ours just happens to be the largest culprit, the largest offender of energy uses, which is infrastructure, HVAC, refrigeration, cooling towers, so on and so forth. So we really take a good hard look at efficiencies of the building and assess those to where we can mitigate and help and offset not only their costs, but do that with a frame of mind of indoor air quality. So there's a big push for that. You mentioned, ESG. We play very well in those three categories. Net zero. There's either a 2030 or a 2050 mandate that you're going to have to hit, and they're no longer niceties. So we are geared up and ready to play in those verticals. We are a California-based company, but have global relationships currently. We've started in healthcare and in California because it was the toughest market. We figured if we could crack California and crack healthcare, we could do essentially any building. And with every
Right.
building having ventilation, there really is no, we've had questions of, well, where are your target focus? Where are you looking to create traction? For us, it's in the commercial and the enterprise space. So larger buildings. But really there's nowhere that we can't go. It would just be different pieces and parts. So that's my opener. To my left, I think you're right, is Bill Gans, our CEO, who we have the pleasure of joining us today. So I'll turn it over to Bill for an introduction, and then we can get into some slides.
Well, it's
Thanks.
certainly a pleasure, and we love Patrick and Frank, and we enjoy these many conversations and meeting the folks. Daryl, it's a pleasure today, and we
Pleasure for
hope,
me.
yeah, thank you, and we hope that anything that we share with you is beneficial. We know that we created something that's needed locally, nationally, and globally. We aren't ahead of the curve; we are the curve. So what you're going to see and hear, you might say, "Well, wow, that's a big idea," and your suspended state of disbelief would go, if that was true, why wouldn't it be everywhere? You're seeing that happen, and you're seeing the beginning of what that looks like. So you're going to look into the future, and the decisions we make today is our future. So that's really where we stand on this.
Well, if I can interject, what caught our attention, here at Certainty Management, we're a cost reduction firm at our heart. That's where we started. We've since expanded into other profitability approaches, but ultimately it's about cutting costs and driving more dollars to our bottom line. What we love about this project, besides the fact that it is in demand. I mean, they talk about they're not just ahead of the curve, they are the curve. It is right place, right time, perfect storm. People are looking for it. Corporations are clamoring for it. And there hasn't been a really great solution until now.
Yeah.
And so a lot of band-aids, right? Air filters and filtration systems and things like that just are not anywhere near as effective as this. But so we love the fact, really, we're here for three main reasons. One, we try to get ahead of trends and curves, and that is absolutely this. This is a hot, hot topic. And secondly, not only can it help organizations lower their costs, which they're all looking for, right? But it also can help create safer environments and a better environment for their employees and their staff. And safety is top of mind for every organization out there. I have a friend who works for Amazon. He says every single meeting they have starts with safety. And so if you can make your environment safer and more profitable, you're hitting two of the hottest buttons for every corporation in America. And then from, I guess, the third corner of the triangle is that it can be very lucrative. This is a multi-billion-dollar arena that we can have a piece of, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yep. Yeah. Again, great segue. These are the executive decisions that are going on in the boardroom right now. What is our ESG plan? How do we get guys back into the office? They're bleeding money left and right, not having folks back to work, and how do we do that safely, right? So what historically,
Kevin, can you explain what ESG is for anyone who doesn't
so
know?
ESG is environmental, social, and governance. It's a way in which the United States government is starting to categorize buildings that check the box on a number of things, whether it's indoor air quality or whether it's comfortability in the workplace, or if it's transparency in the workplace. It's what is the not only financial health of our business, but what are the health of the folks that are going to work in those buildings. The governance side gets into more tax transparency and executive salary displays. So really, it's I see it as a magnifying glass in what the actual building makeup is and business makeup is. So they're trying to create more transparency and really share that with the public. So a lot of what we do is in that same vein. So I'm going to get into a few different pieces and parts that are attached to our program. At the end of the day, Daryl, we're a engineering system integrator. We have spent 3 years in R&D. I have a military defense background and an IT background, and had to be very, very cautious of tolerances and different specifications. Bill's got 9 engineering degrees in film and video and has produced shows and events and launched many, many, many companies. So over the course of the 3 years, we just have been into sales. Q1 of 2023, have 2 current clients and have about 8 really hot ones in the hopper right now. Are aligned with a mechanical engineering firm out here in Southern California who brought us into Kaiser Permanente. We've got another healthcare system up north called Sutter Health. So it doesn't matter if it's a university, if it's a hospital, if it's a large commercial building, if it's a movie theater, if it's a mall, it doesn't much matter to us. What the opportunity now is that has really sprung to the forefront is a lot of the codes have changed. The mechanical codes have changed. And before, you had to choose whether you wanted to be operationally efficient, so you'd sacrifice indoor air quality, or you wanted really, really good indoor air quality for your employees and your occupants, so you'd sacrifice cost. That does not have to be that way anymore. So ROI and HVAC had never ever gone together. There was never an opportunity for it to be designed that way up until 2022. Code started to change in 2019, 2022, some things were solidified to allow the math to work. So at the end of the day, it's a mathematic equation. We'll go into a building and identify, and this is us. This isn't the biz dev folks that are out in the field. All we're asking for is a warm handoff that we'll get into a bit later in the slide deck. But we're a consultative sales firm that focuses on their building assessment, and then we'll come back and get a high-level design together and coordinate that with a local incumbent mechanical engineering firms and work hand in hand with those guys on the install side. So the customer may have a number of things that they're concerned with. How do I lower costs? How do I stay more sustainable? I've got a virus problem going on here. I got folks getting sick all over the place. Too hot, too cold, particulate matter. Hospitals are really cautious of humidity. They've got to have so much humidity in certain areas of their building by code. So these are all things that we deal with on a daily basis. And then what we'll do is, after we get a takeoff sheet, 10 to 15 questionnaire filled out from the end client, we can then go through and run it through a series of software tools. And what the software tools allow us to do is compare and contrast. Whether it's a retrofit or it's a new building, it doesn't much matter to us. Being able to capture some data at a 50,000 foot view for what their infrastructure looks like allows us to essentially model what our solution would be before stepping foot onto the shop floor itself, right? Or the lobby itself, or the healthcare facility itself. We don't have to travel far and wide for us to get a pretty good scope of what their EUI is, or energy use indication is. And to Patrick's point, net zero is no longer a nicety. If you're a building in New York over 50,000 square feet, you have to energy benchmark. And if you're over that energy benchmark threshold, you're going to start to be fined per ton of CO2 that you emit. So it's a very, very serious thing when it comes to net zero. Now, we are attacking the largest culprit, so therefore we can allow for the largest returns when it comes to a particular business. HVAC and refrigeration and cooling and heating make up about 50 to 60% of any building's operational costs. Same thing in your home. When you turn your heater on, your costs go through the roof. We're out here in California, we turn our air conditioning on, or Texas, you turn your AC on, your costs go 10x, a compound, right? So it's the same thing with large commercial buildings. The difference is commercial buildings exhaust their paid for air all day long. So air comes into a building, it's heated, cooled, or cooled and cleaned, and it goes through the infrastructure once and then out the door all day long. So take a look at your area in the wintertime, right? They're heating all day long, but they deal with a delta temperature or delta T of 30, 40 degrees, trying to get it to 70 degrees all day long because they're exhausting so much of the air that they've spent conditioning. So it doesn't have to be that way anymore. There's tools and technologies out there now, along with sophisticated engineering, that allows for mechanical components to be put in place around the edges of a building that allow you to keep more of the air that you spent money on conditioning. That's our goal in every project, is how do we reduce the amount of air that's coming into the building so that we can significantly lower costs. So for us, Cove Tool it would be the step one, if you will, in a relationship with a customer. After we get a takeoff sheet, customer says, okay, I want to know more. We ask for a bit more data, and then we can run it through our Cove tool that really gives us a granular look as to what that compare and contrast would look like. So it's a conversation that would go like this. Mr. Customer, your current building is running this way. It's costing you this much money per month. Here's the opportunity that we have to lower your cost to this, all while having a byproduct of really, really clean air inside. Everything that we do touches some form of air conditioning or some form of particulate or gaseous contamination. So the byproduct of us lowering energy costs for the customer is really, really clean air inside. So I've got a few short videos that I'll play to just kind of give you a bird's eye view of how these technologies work and what some of the capabilities are.
Hey, Kevin, can I interject real quick before
Sure.
you run that?
Yep.
Like I said, Daryl, it's for anyone who's listening, to us, this seemed like a pretty perfect storm because there's demand, there's a need, there's fines even being levied or about to be, because if entities aren't coming into compliance. So it's more than just a nice idea or a desire. This is being mandated.
Yeah.
So they're actively looking for a solution. We have a rep in New York who's running from appointment to appointment with customers because they know they need this and they needed it yesterday. And yet what I love about this Cove tool, and as you'll see as we get into this isn't just hyperbole. It's not just, well, we think we can improve your air quality. They can actually measure before and after.
Yeah.
And this is very specific and very, it's very data driven. So it's not just a guesstimate. It's not just a sales job. It is, let us show you exactly where you're at and exactly where you'll be. And that's a breath of fresh air to customers, I'm sure, right, Kev?
Yeah, there really is no sale. You know, there were a lot of things that were sold during COVID. And good for us. You know, we can come right behind any of those things that have been done and kind of share with them that, you know, you were sold some snake oil, potentially. There are some really good things that were done during COVID, but it still takes a layered approach to get a big ROI. Regardless, at the end of the day, you can't knock down 50% of your building costs with just electric heat pumps out of New York. So you need a layered approach. And with our integration of various components, that allows us to really move the needle that much further when it comes to cost reduction. But to your point, Patrick, it's a math equation. It's a definitive math equation, one-to-one, data-driven.
That's what I love. Yep.
Yep. Certainly takes the sale out of anything.
I like certainty. That's that's our company name. That's my radio show. It's all about certainty, and this can give clients that certainty both in the presentation and the analysis, but then obviously ongoing because they can continue to measure it.
Yeah, and so this would be certainty on the pre-construction side. We go one step further to provide certainty and edification when we monitor the space as a whole. So this would be kind of your opening stage, or our opening stage with a customer. Right. I'll get into a little bit later in the presentation of how we monitor with various sensors that actually edify the things that we've designed here on the front end. So you may not hear any music, but it'll start to blare through in here in just a minute. So there was a section there that talked about change. Well, the first one I want to point out is the embodied carbon and operational carbon. So embodied carbon would be things like your wallpaper, your types of wood that you use, anything that's used as from a building materials perspective. We deal a lot in lead and well on the operational carbon side of things, which is really where you can make a continuing impact on cost reductions. So I just wanted to point that out. But this tool, Daryl, you can go from mild to wild. It's all, again, data driven, based on real facts and numbers that the existing building would give us. And then we would be able to provide a contrast statement then after running the numbers. So that's essentially step one, that then really furthers and advances a conversation into more decision making. Again, we compare the apples to oranges at the end of the day. So once we identify what that opportunity looks like, it'll give us what are those specific tools that we need to install, and this is where we start to identify revenue and identify profit, which is transparent with every one of our reps in the field. So we are always trying to get to a 30% plus margin. That's on the hardware itself. We're always looking to take points on the labor as well. And if there's software involved at an ongoing basis with, say, attached to the building management system, we'll take a reoccurring fee on that as well. So it's all 7-8 figure opportunities in the spaces that we're playing. There's no, our first phase of development at Sutter Health is 2.2 million, and that's it's a smaller building. So big opportunity, again, in each one of those silos of revenue. And none of these guys are emerging. They've all been around for quite some time. The way in which you can use them now is absolutely different, and that's what we've engineered. With our layered approach, the more you add, the more you save, essentially. So I just want to get into a few pieces and parts now, talking about how we provide indoor air quality in conjunction with net zero. Healthway is a group actually in your neck of the woods, Daryl. They're out of Pulaski, New York. There was a large talk about everybody moving to HEPA filtration during the pandemic. And while HEPA does help, if we're talking about micron size and particulates and virus sizes, it's not really doing a whole lot, unfortunately. And on top of that, HEPA is very, very, very expensive if the infrastructure can handle it to begin with. So you really got the best of both worlds when it comes to what Healthway does. It's a series or an array of filters that'll fit in any large air handler. We've got a different manufacturer that we can do with smaller air handlers, but the technology is the same. Now, where you really start to benefit on the eco side is in the cost reduction and carbon neutrality aspect of things. So on the left-hand side here, this Healthway Excel sheet snip was from a 70,000 square foot building. They've got a 48,000 CFM system. We were able to reduce cost by 13 grand. That's on just one air handler. And then you've got a 73,000 offset in KWH, which on the right-hand side, because I'm a skeptic, I went and did my own calculations. You can find this calculator on the EPA website. It was 50 metric tons of CO2 reduced. So now we're satisfying ESG, we're satisfying net zero for the customer, we're satisfying cost reduction for the customer, and you've got dramatically better indoor air quality for getting down to 0.007 microns. Moving into another technology that we're really, really hot on right now. It's the only one of its kind. So Healthway is a patented technology. The next one I'm going to go into is what Inverid does. I was talking about, I'm actually going to switch screens for a moment and move to this slide deck here. And we'll go into what Inverid does. I was talking about outside air reduction. The reason why buildings have inflated operational costs is because they waste a lot of air. And they're trying to always get to a set point, whatever that temperature set point is. The reason why they do that, and the reason why the code has been the same way for the last 30, 40 years, is because they thought that by diluting so much of the air, we'd have a lot less particulate, a lot less harm in the space. We can substitute that dilution method with what Inverid does to capture a lot of the gaseous contaminants, whether it be CO2 for people or off-gassing for carpets or formaldehyde or benzene or whatever that is harmful that exists in that current building. They were previously using the dilution method. So we can substitute that dilution method and significantly lower cost by just pressurizing the building and allowing the mechanicals to take care of all of the harmful byproducts of people, carpets, building materials, so forth. So again, just another short video to kind of talk through the technology as we start to piece the solution together here.
Maintaining indoor air quality is a huge expense in commercial buildings. Over time, contaminants like carbon dioxide, formaldehyde, and VOCs build up inside the building. To address this, the typical HVAC system replaces all of a building's air every 1 to 2 hours to dilute them. This outside air adds 30 to 50% more load on HVAC systems. The result? Massive wasted energy and oversized HVAC systems to deal with the load, which means higher first cost capital expense and greater ongoing energy and maintenance costs. Plus, outside air brings in its own pollutants, especially for buildings in cities or near highways. You can solve these problems with the Inverid HVAC Load Reduction, or HLR module. HLR technology is the only solution that safely removes all indoor air contaminants through molecular cleaning, which improves indoor air quality and reduces the need for outside air by 60 to 80%. This lowers required HVAC capacity for heating and cooling and capital expense, while reducing annual energy consumption by 20 to 30%, with peak savings of over 40% and much less outdoor pollution brought into the building. The underlying air cleaning technology has been around for decades in spacecraft and submarines and is based on sorbent materials engineered to capture contaminants. Its operation is surprisingly straightforward. In adsorption mode, the HLR module draws circulating air from the building's HVAC system. Non-toxic sorbent cartridges capture contaminants so clean air flows back into the building. When sorbent cartridges are saturated, the module automatically begins a self-cleaning process called regeneration. In this mode, a small heater warms air inside the module, releasing contaminants and safely exhausting them outside the building. Using Inverid HLR technology, you can save on new HVAC system costs or expand the capacity of existing systems. Earn lead points, stop wasting energy, and reduce operating expenses. Improve indoor air quality and care for your building's occupants.
So this
Hello.
It sounded like his computer shut down and then he was
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. He must have been hit
Maybe
by a
his-
truck or something.
I don't know what the heck he's dropped
I'll
off
just-
the screen.
Yeah, it sounded like his computer shut down just instants before he disappeared. So
Hold on, he's
hopefully
calling.
he'll come. Yeah, hopefully he'll
Now-
come
Just had a
right back.
power outage.
Yeah, I'll I'll dial in. Hold on. His laptop died. He was going all day on it. Hold this 2 seconds and I'll bring it up.
No
I'm on
problem.
this new
What
computer.
I was just gonna add to what you're seeing here, guys, as you're looking at this technology is it's tackling these problems with some really creative approaches, right? Rather than bringing in contaminants and outside pollution over and over and over, which is expensive to pay for initially for the equipment and expensive to continue to do, this technology can clean the air, recirculate it, and you're not, you see, even with the way it heats up and kills the contaminants and then exits them from the building, you're not having to pay for filters over and over and over and over that don't work as effectively and are much more expensive. And so what they're doing is they're tackling these problems with just some really creative solutions that, I like anything that's a no-brainer. And it seems like a pretty big no-brainer, right, Bill?
I think so. I have 3 computers in the computer repair store, which is where I just came from. And I'm putting in a USB stick. We were running off Kevin's laptop and I'm running off a new computer we just configured this afternoon.
Understood.
Uh,
While you do that, let me talk a little bit about the income potential, because I know that part. So as Kevin said, these are 7 and 8 digit jobs. These are not, $10,000. Their goal is to net at least 30%. And it could be even more, but that's their target is a 30% net. $10 million job, that's $3 million. Our commission on it, our share of this equates to 8% to whoever brings it. We actually have 16%. We split it with whoever brings the job. We have the license with them. In that case, it's basically a $500,000 commission on that example, about $480,000. So you land a client like this, it can be tens of thousands of dollars, even hundreds of thousands in a single job. One of the things that appeals to us, they're very transparent about their cost, about their profits, about our share, and they don't want us to sell it because it's so technical. They said, you don't really even need to sell it. Once a customer sees this, understands, especially with the tax credits and other things available to them, it's not a difficult sell, right? What they need is warm context. They need a prospective customer who has the building size or has the property size, who has the need, and is willing to hear them out. Yes, sir.
When you're ready, if you'll throw me the screen share.
Yeah, you should be able to. It's turned on.
Okay, let me just bring this up. So let me just pop around for a second. But at the end of the day, there's only one aspect, one thing that we ask for from the folks out in the field is just understand this slide, because it frankly is how we get to our customers and how the people we know get to our customers. Medical grade pathogen mitigation. I just spoke to a hospital operator in Queens that has 2 locations, and that was their goal. But it's very expensive to talk about, whether it's a mall or whether it's, there's Kevin.
Hi, sorry about that.
Hi, Kevin.
Let me stop screen share.
Which
You
Kevin?
were,
So
you were
where did you
saying,
leave off?
Bill, he was just saying that those 3 things that were just on the screen now are the top 3 things people are looking for, right? Reduce the pathogens, reduce costs, and the net zero goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
To summarize it into a nutshell, right?
we haven't heard a whole lot of no's. We haven't heard a whole lot of no's. We have probably 9 active models that we're going through right now, and it's because it's all data driven. So when you start to share case studies like this, and this is just south of you in New York, or north of you, I should say. It's south of you.
North. He's in Virginia.
New York's north of me.
Yeah. That's no small feat, 1,300 metric tons. You know, you're at their 2030 goals tomorrow. I mean, day one of install. You've reduced the amount of outside air by that much. It's significant. So when you start to combine a lot of these tools and technologies that I briefly shared with you, you've got a serious decision to make on the client side. Do they want to continue paying $10 per 1,000 pounds of humidity, or would they rather be at 23 cents per 1,000 pounds for humidity? And again, we're on a, you know, kind of divine timing, if you will. This particular technology was only allowed, certainly in hospitals, 2021. Hospitals usually used to provide humidity through steam, right? So you'd have a heating element, which is really costly, whether it's gas or boiler-based steam. You put an RO system in, you put in high pressure nozzles, and you deliver humidification the same way. So those two products by themselves, huge impact. The last couple that I'm going to share with you, and then I'll kind of open it up for some questions, is because we're dealing with water technology on the HVAC side. Most large buildings have either a cooling tower or a chiller unit that they'll use for both heating and cooling, a boiler system of some sort. And because, again, we're looking at the infrastructure as a whole, we said, why not? If we're already earning trust with the customer, it's kind of how each of our sales have evolved. You know, these guys meaning commercial building owners that are attached to these mechanical firms, they're getting gouged left and right, you know, and they're getting gouged left and right. I don't think it's intentional. It's just that the mechanical firms aren't innovative. They're not responsible for innovation. They've made plenty of darn money. Turner Construction's $1 billion construction firm. They made plenty of money bending pipe and installing infrastructure. So why change? It's not until you start to get some of these disruptive technologies underneath their belt that they start to kind of swing their business model a little bit. So case in point is my brother works at a large mechanical firm out here, Daryl. They did SoFi Stadium, they do the Marriotts, they do all big buildings, they do Kaiser. And they brought us in, allowed us to pitch, and ended up hiring us. You know, they're a mechanical engineering firm, very sophisticated, but they just don't have a focus on this niche market. Again, they're not responsible for innovation. So as we start to add various technologies and add a program, if you will, to these mechanical firms, the other mechanical firms that they're bidding against are getting their butts kicked. So now we're fielding calls from Murray Mechanical, we're fielding calls from ACO, we're fielding calls from other groups to say, what is it that you've shared with Pan Pacific Mechanical? We need to know, because they're always in a 3-bid scenario, right? These guys go in, the customer says, I want to go net zero route. They're going to get three different bids. They're going to get 3 different, you know, ways to skin the cat. They're certainly not doing it this way. And I know that for a fact, because we just got done with the roadshow Q4 of last year, where their eyes were just, you know, cartoon characters, as Bill likes to say, coming after the presentation. So we're not only educating the customer, but we're educating the mechanical engineering firms. We need to be in partnership with those guys because they're the boots on the ground labor force anyway. So we just, we empower them with the knowledge that we have. They end up hiring us for the design and engineering, and they go out and install the equipment. So it's a natural partnership. It's just, you got to just find your champion within those mechanical firms. So that's kind of just an update as to how we've started to develop business ourselves directly. Any one of these these pieces and parts stand on their own too. As you start to combine them, you know, you're looking at 10% here and 15% there and 30% here. It's a big darn savings. And they're giving away money left and right now, to Patrick's earlier point, whether it's tax credits or whether we do a cost-based engineering study to reallocate assets that are stuck in a 39-year tax class. Anything that they're removing, if we're removing a boiler system and it's got 15 years left on that boiler system, there's lost dollars if they just throw that stuff away. And these business owners and these, even the CTOs, COOs don't realize that there's money left on those things. So we can get pretty darn close to zero cost in tax reimbursements and cost-based engineering studies for the projects. And these are, again, all 7-figure projects. So we've got the tools and technologies, we've got the design, and we have the financing. Reason we're not hearing a whole lot of no's as it currently stands. They at least want to know that we're full of crap. So they'll give us information on what their building looks like, and we can go and do a study for them, and then just really start to open their eyes to the possibilities. And then we get into the last one that I'll round out is 2 months ago, we were down in Atlanta for the AHR conference. So ASHRAE governs heating and air conditioning. They put on basically the World Series of air conditioning every year. And the whole theme of that show was AI, energy efficiency, and sustainability. So by having a group like Honeywell Forge layered over the top of the building management system, we can now squeeze out additional efficiencies by having and really utilizing the smart technologies to their fullest. I liken it to the cell phone, right? We've got mini computers on our hand, and they're $1,000, and folks use them for talk, text, and the web. I can run a presentation from this thing. I can, manage my home from this thing. I can start a car from this thing. I can, you can really optimize a building these days with simple software implementations. And it's simple to us, right? It's our business. We're not expecting the customer to do this, but things that can be done with software just can't be humanly done. We've talked about creating network operation centers for large grouping of hospitals. By the time we're done with Sutter Health, it'll be 24 hospitals and 150 clinics. That's a lot to manage. And certainly with new technology, Bob in the boiler room is going to be no longer when you've got this large AI push and this big eco push. So if they're installing smart assets at the edge, we're creating network operation centers to allow just a couple of guys to manage those things. And here's why. Most of the businesses work in a break-fix type model. So I'm going to run my air handler. I'm going to get every last drop out of that air handler or that chiller tower or this filtration unit or this humidification unit, and I'm going to fix it when it breaks. That's really costly. So we want to stay on the proactive side from a maintenance perspective, and this is where we really win with the facilities guys. They've got 150 trouble tickets that they're trying to catch up on in any one given time. If they knew that a belt was going out or a fan was getting hot much further ahead of time, it would be less stress on them. It'd be obviously less stress on the equipment because you're not running it until it breaks. And from a cost perspective, it's a $500 fix versus a $50,000 fix to change a belt out or a fan motor out. So that's really the advantage of what Honeywell Forge is doing. It allows us to be really proactive and predictive to a lot of these edge technologies and the building as a whole. So the last piece of technology that I'll share with you that really allows us to sidestep the BS, if you will, is what we call indoor air quality monitoring, or what the industry knows as indoor air quality monitoring. This is an actual snapshot of an actual building. It's a wireless sensor that will stick on the side of a conference room, an office. You can display it on a tablet, on a monitor, on a television as you walk into the building, as you walk into the lobby, what have you. But it's a great tool for a number of reasons. It really gives the building operators certainty that they've done something right. They can then take that information and use it as a campaign to say, hey, building A, we've got really clean air in here, and we're going to display it on our website, and we're going to display it on a monitor in the lobby as you walk in, and go out and create a campaign with that. Not only that, but New York has started to give grades out for buildings. So similar to how we have the California Department of Health out here, and you're familiar with this, Patrick. You got an A, B, or C rating. Outside of being a really, really late night on a Friday night 15 years ago, I don't think I've eaten at anything less than an A. So buildings in New York City are starting to identify their energy efficiency scores and kind of poo-poo on folks that are not doing the deal when it comes to net zero. So again, it's no longer a nicety. Indoor air quality monitoring for us is also a great sales tool. We know that we've got a fantastic design, but we want the customer to know that they've got a fantastic design and that the occupants inside that are really, really safe. This also plays really, really well into ESG. I talked about transparency at the onset of this presentation, and they can display their data so that the occupants and the employees know that they're actually walking into a safe space. And if it's not safe, how do they then, remediate that? How do they mitigate some of the risk? So this will be the last video that I'll play, and then I'll kind of open it up for questions. I apologize if I've gotten a bit too technical. It's just, it's part of my nature. We'll play this and then we'll open it up for questions.
Our AirThings virus risk indicator, which gives you a comprehensive overview of the airborne virus risk in your building and comes with adaptive suggestions for how to manage and reduce that risk. It's a wireless indoor air quality device that monitors 7 parameters every 5 minutes.
I'll start this over for you, Dale. I know you're getting settled again.
Which gives you a comprehensive virus risk indicator, which gives you a comprehensive overview of the airborne virus risk in your building and comes with adaptive suggestions for how to manage and reduce that risk. It's a wireless indoor air quality device that monitors 7 parameters every 5 minutes and transmits them to the AirThings cloud, giving you a comprehensive overview of your indoor environment. Now, for the AirThings virus risk indicator, we use 3 of those sensors. It's a temperature sensor, the humidity sensor, and the CO2 sensor. We combine these to calculate a score from 0 to 10 for the risk of airborne virus transmission within your buildings. Insight for us is where we take the raw sensor data from our devices and translate them into actionable insights that give you the better understanding for how you can improve both the indoor environment and the energy usage of your buildings. The first thing I see is that I get a summary of all my devices for how many are within the normal, action, and warning levels of risk. Then I can scroll down and look at for each individual room how the risk levels fluctuate throughout the period, what the key risk factors are that contribute the most to these risk levels, and also adaptive suggestions for how I could improve and manage the risk in this particular room.
So again, there's a number of ways in which you can use this tool. Folks don't know what they can't, you can't see air, right? So we really can provide not only edification to our solution, but edification to the building and the filtration that's in that building, right? You also have a opportunity to mitigate future harm and mitigate risks. So you can set various thresholds for that building itself. You can be used as a phased 1 approach to the building to say, let's go in and get a baseline approach so that we can work backwards from there. Yes, are we going to have the mechanical schedule and some of the infrastructure data early on in the design? But everything that we do, if we've got the customer's attention and we can save them, enormous amounts through various technologies, let's start with what indoor air quality monitoring can provide from a baseline. And then you can use that again as your campaign to say, think of it from an HR perspective. A lot of folks are having trouble getting people back into the building, nurses especially. So Sutter Health is planning on using this to advocate that, hey, it's cleaner in here. It's cleaner than going down to Dignity Health. And we're going to share that with you and be transparent. From an ESG perspective, there's a lot of different categories that talk about transparency. And then just from a a marketing campaign perspective, when we were working down in Mexico City, one of the movie theater chains down there said, well, can we display this data? And the answer is yes. It's you can be displayed. There's an open API. You can display it on a cell phone, on a tablet. You can hook it up to a monitor. You can put it on your website, so on and so forth. So it's a really, really comprehensive program. We have many different pieces and parts. The pieces and parts may change, but the mission for us is always going to be net zero indoor air quality. Now,
Kevin, can you click on that slide that showed the hospital?
Sure. This
That
here?
one right there. Yeah. You look at all the different things that this can track. I mean, people worry about carbon monoxide, but there's so much more, especially in a hospital. They're looking at humidity, they're looking at temperatures, they're looking at pressure, mold risks.
You have to have it.
The list goes on and on.
You have to have, so in an operating room, you've got to be between 30 and 50% to operate. It's
how do they measure it? How do they measure it now without this technology? That's my question. What are we competing against?
I'll share with you how. Give me just a moment.
This is one of my favorite answers.
It could be as simple, either they don't, or they use something like this.
For a
No,
human.
right now we've got pretty good humidity. You want to sit ideally between 40 and 60%. If it's too dry, you've got what's called a mucosal layer in your body, right? And the mucosal layer acts as a sponge. So think of it as a sponge getting too dry. Now you've got porousness, right? You've got holes in it, if you will, just like a dry sponge would have. If it's too wet, you create a breeding ground for bacteria and many other things. So it's ideal to have between 40 and 60% humidity. It's called the Sterile chart that was developed in Germany about a century ago. So that, in addition to differential pressure, they've gone as far as saying, gosh, some of the complaints that they're getting is the nurses station is really, really noisy. So now you can create KPIs and metrics around, what the building looks like as a whole, and then start to be prescriptive with a data-driven approach versus, man, I hope something goes on, or I've got to hire these guys to come back out and do some indoor air quality testing again, because they're required to do indoor air quality testing. But it's just a brief snapshot. And what I mean by that is there was a customer who late in the afternoon, a lot of the folks were complaining of headaches. And this was actually a mechanical firm. They went round and round looking for solutions. They had handheld testers, and it was really, really hard for them to find things. So they installed indoor air quality monitoring, and there was a spike between 3 and 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon. And so they asked all over, you guys doing anything different? No. Got to the warehouse guys. What are you guys doing between 3 and 4 o'clock? Nothing, boss, but plugging in our forklifts. Well, one of the forklifts had a propane leak, and it was emitting nasty gas in and throughout that building that was making everybody sick.
Really? Wow.
So, again, you can use it for a variety of reasons. I love it for us because it takes the sale out of things. There were so many companies that have come and gone through COVID. Yeah. We're here for the long haul. We knew that there would be a kind of COVID fatigue happening, after everybody returned to work. But, when you start talking energy efficiency, everybody's ears perk up, because that means cost. Yeah. We've figured out a way to do both. There's no sacrifices at all anymore. Now, is there going to be a capital cost? Sure. And that's where the lending guys come in. It doesn't matter so much the project goal, right? We can achieve them all. Now you've got a scale of where you're going to have a capital expense, but day one after install. So say they go out and they borrow $5 million, right? Because they don't want to take that off. They don't have it, or they don't want to affect EBITDA. It'd be the same way that you do your solar for your home. I've got solar. It's going to cost me $25,000. I'm going to go and borrow that money at a low interest rate. and my bill then drops to 80, I take that delta of monies and do whatever I choose to with it. In this case, they could apply that towards the equipment should they choose to, or creating another project. So there's an ROI through the actual equipment itself. There's an ROI when it comes to the tax strategies that you've mentioned and you're aware of, Patrick. There's an ROI when it comes to doing a cost-based engineering study that's about 15 to 20 grand that can uncover just about all of the project costs. And then we get to this timeline, and we can share this timeline with the customer. Inverid alone just got done with a mall in Dubai. Just Inverid, just that HVAC load reduction unit that reduces the amount of outside air. It was 2.1 million square feet. It was $3 million in equipment, and it ROIs in just over 2 years. And now they've got an operational savings of $1 million per year.
Wow.
It's incredible. So we're going to be able to calculate that timeline is also what I'm sharing. It's nothing is ambiguous or egregious here. It's all based on mathematics, science, and data. I'm a crappy salesperson.
Kevin, this is
I'm a
Frank.
crappy salesperson anyway, so I need tools like this to get me past the sales hump.
Frank, you had a
Kevin,
question?
this is Frank. I got a question regarding you're going down ROI, which is bringing smiles to my face, right? Even though you can't see it. Isn't there another ROI in here in the effect that the occupancy rate of that commercial building is probably not up to par, largely because of this nonsense that we've been going through? Have you got any stats as far as any completed projects where you saw that occupancy rate elevated, after this went in? Because I mean, not to configure that into the ROI is absolute foolishness.
Yeah, I agree with you. To answer your questions, do we have any data on that? Yes, about 15 white papers on the effects of people returning to work and not returning to work, or returning to businesses, or not returning to malls, or not returning to. I think Amazon's got something to do with that, but certainly, restaurants. If we've got a chain of restaurants, we'd be willing to entertain some of that. I know that's a hot button for you, Frank. So, but yes. Now, my argument is it's still hypothetical. I would much rather use the mathematic calculations on the HVAC side and the tax side to know that we've got a true number. But hypothetically, yes. I mean, I can see after install the campaign, using the indoor air quality monitoring on a website or display or a campaign,
It's also
trail.
It's also a decided advantage. If I'm coming up on the end of my lease in a commercial space,
Sure.
and all of a sudden I'm finding that there's another competitive building that is in compliance and the one I'm in isn't.
Yep.
Okay. That's a decided advantage. It is.
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually seen that effect, starting to see that affect rents, and the way in which actually folks are coming back to work. It's almost the voice of the employee is so loud now that businesses are really being hamstrung by not doing the right thing. We've got a conference that we need to follow up on, Patrick. That SHRM conference in June, I believe. Bill, is it June that SHRM conference?
Yeah,
June
that's what
14,
he said.
15, 16 in Las Vegas.
Yeah, so that's the HR conference. We go and create a standard in which we can quantify and validate a return to work plan. I think it's game on. We've got so much runway right now. You really can't go. There's not a place you can go to where you wouldn't be able to set a meeting, and that's all we're asking for guys in the field is we want to control the conversation. I see your hand up. I'll stop in just a moment. We want to control the conversation. It's highly technical, and we just all we're asking for at the end of the day for the guys that are out in the field is a warm lead. I'm sorry, I'm done now. I'm doing my best Bill Gans impersonation.
It would take a
You're
lot
doing
more
great.
caffeine than that.
Well, you
But
said that HR piece, Kevin, that is a huge one. I mean, I was in that arena for 20 years in the insurance game, and HR's main function is the noise level of the employee ranks.
Hmm.
So, if the employers are bellowing, I mean, HR is going to be a great, point of contact for you.
Yeah, we'll all put together a big team to head out to that conference. I'd like to have you there, Frank. Patrick, you're obviously there. We'll get Tony there. I think we can tell a really, really big story there. We might even submit for a speaking engagement there.
Believe me, I know their language, Kevin.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to call on you for some help with that then.
I can tell you this. You want a suggestion? If mostly all HR managers are female, okay? I would invest in some long stem red roses and pass out every single HR lady a long stem rose.
Yeah.
That is a memory they will not forget. I did that for years in the insurance game. Never had a problem with getting to my HR manager.
And the HR managers were usually the wild ones. I remember working for a small managed services firm out here, and she would party just as much as a lot of the young kids that were there.
We won't go there, Kevin.
Yeah, Patrick's going to be distributing. He's going to be distributing this.
Let me just add let me add one thing that, Frank, we want to think of, just to answer your question. Of course, you don't have to get into any and all of this. We're just sharing this with y'all because it would just be a referral. So you wouldn't be going into all these nuances. Nobody would but us. But in our predominant ROI model, there are three. There is the efficiencies of some of the equipment Kevin just showed you. There's the financing options, and there's the tax incentives. And they virtually on their own could each have their own independent ROI. What we think is the combined efforts are astounding, just astounding, just stop the ban. But just in one of the nuance points you just went back to, you'd think that monitoring would be more important going into a pandemic, whether it was a virus, whether it was a bacteria, whatever it may be. What's interesting is our client who runs a hospital, I won't mention it, or the hospital, but he says, I'm looking at this, and the biggest application I see this being utilized for is the nurses station, because all the patients all complain that it's so loud when they all talk. They're there 24 hours a day, and when they're not serving the meds or tending to the patients, they're all there talking, and it keeps the patients, out from the. So you don't even know anymore what all these things can do. But Frank, in answer to the ROI question, there are three predominant ROIs that are facts: the efficiencies of the equipment, the finance options, and the tax incentives. But that isn't all the ROIs, because those are the hard cost ROIs that we can fully generate out. The soft cost ROIs is employees coming back to work. That same hospital client I was talking to you about said, our hardest job at this hospital is hiring folks during and after a pandemic. Nobody wanted to go to a hospital and work during a pandemic, and they're still terrified today. So if you could go there and on your cell phone or on a tablet or on a monitor on the wall or on a website or on a desktop or a laptop, you could see the air quality, of which you can't see the air and you can't smell the air. We can digitally. So there are soft costs of labor issues. There are soft costs of sick building syndrome. We got invited to an RFP with the city of Long Beach. Their new greenest building just assembled in California. They've had to send everybody home because they've got sick building syndrome. Well, what do they say? Well, we need to fix that. Okay, great. So here you go. You could go and do that. But just the idea of the pathogen focus is one element versus all these other things that create an ROI. You'd get that pathogen focus for free. So whatever you're looking at, whether it's indoor air quality or achieving your net zero goals, they're both mandatory at this point.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about safe occupation from an HR person, one of their responsibilities is health and safety. Compliance is another one. And I was presenting at the SHRM show for 3 years before I started this project with another client, which was an HR software. And they're mostly attorneys. They're mostly women, high 90% women, and they're not really party animals. That I was there 16, 17, and 18, going to the regional shows for SHRM, Society of HR Managers, and the 3 national shows. I had booths at all of them for my client. So it's a very compliant, non-gamey, non-pitchy environment. They're more structural, they're more tactile. But I think when you talk health and safety, reducing sick days, which is an enormous figure. Kevin was talking about these white papers. We have piece after piece after piece out of sick days, on sick building syndrome, all these different things we have are soft ROI costs, but our 3 predominant are the efficiencies of the equipment, the finance options, and the tax incentives.
Yeah, you're going to need to satisfy a lot of mouths, you know. So if you've got an audience, of C-level executives, you know, CTO is going to be involved in how these things work. COO is going to be attracted to some of these operational costs, and then you've got facility managers that we can satisfy along with the HR folks. So we've got a pretty well-rounded story.
The chief
Well,
financial
and
officer is going to wonder what he's going to do with all the windfall profits you're going to create, Kevin.
We've created a profit center for them, Frank.
Yeah, the other thing is too, back to what you were saying, Bill, you know, we saw how the Biden administration tried to penetrate the OSHA laws, right? And, you know, if for some reason one of these viruses would go airborne, you guys would have one of the biggest buildings in LA.
Yeah, there's really no vertical that we can't service. We're agnostic when it comes to the pieces. We had a question. Well, who's your competition? We talked to the 4 largest mechanical firms here, of which we're continuing to educate and continuing to align with. They don't want to go and create. They don't want to go and recreate what we've done. They would just hire us. They'd rather just hire us. They're going to win. They're going to win on the labor anyway. They make money on their labor anyway. They don't make a whole heck of a lot on equipment because everybody knows the margins in those. You know, they know that the air handler margins are only so much, so you can't be slighted there. You know, they make all their money on time of job, right? And how many labor hours am I going to spend on this? How quickly can I get the job done? So I wanted to open up to Daryl and give him a chance to speak, Daryl, and field any questions that you may have, sir.
If I may, let me interject one thing. I just want to summarize that as we look at this, I told you we look for things and opportunities that we can get behind a trend or get ahead of a wave. You hit the key points, Bill and Kevin both, about being able to create an ROI for them just through the efficiencies of the product and through the financing options and through the tax credits. And then everything else is just gravy on top of it. The return to work savings, the satisfaction level of employees. I mean, recruiting and retention, the list goes on, right?
Yeah.
Because especially when you can advertise and publish those data points. And yet I love the fact that there's so many selling points. There's so much value built into this. You don't even need the gravy. I mean, but the gravy, that's a lot of, it's a lot of gravy. It's like as much frosting on top as there is a cake underneath. And so
you get it whether you want it or not.
To measure those, you have more than enough to make this an absolute no-brainer for your clients. So I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
but you
get
know,
it.
your main gig here, Kevin, is that you are compliance in ESG. That is huge. You
Yeah.
saw that in Irvine.
Yep.
Big deal.
We saw it in Atlanta. We see it being a very key driver. So, and we satisfy both sides of the aisles at the end of the day. We're actually doing something good. And so whether no matter where you sit, doesn't much
You're
matter.
green
to us.
and you're profitable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Daryl, you have any questions, my friend?
I have less than 1,000.
Give me your top three, Daryl.
My first question is, Kevin, would you say that you're the better mousetrap now, or are you the mousetrap now?
I'd respectfully say that we are the mousetrap. Everybody, when I say everybody, your mechanical firms, your architects, your developers are looking for sustainability and efficiencies. They're looking to do it ways in which it's very rudimentary or it's very costly. It's not that you couldn't go out and make a building green now. It would be very expensive. So installing regular timber versus, composite based, you've got a larger cost. Installing, chilled water beams for free cooling versus a regular beam. Are you going to get free cooling? Absolutely. But you've got 5 times a regular steel beam that it would be. So I'd respectfully say that we are the mousetrap. That's been confirmed by us being hired by these mechanical firms. Otherwise, they'd go and do it themselves.
I couldn't agree more. Obviously, it's a capital expenditure, so that it's got a depreciation schedule. So if I went to an expert in cost segregation, how long would he allow you to depreciate the equipment?
It just depends on what the life cycle left is. You're singing to my heartstrings now. I'm going to introduce you to a gentleman named John Bowman, who spent 20 years at Philips doing all cost segregation. It's something that we just started including at the beginning of this year when he turned us on to that. So it really just depends on what the life cycle left on that particular equipment is and what asset class it's sitting in. Most of this stuff's in the 39-year asset class. What I think we see, or what we've seen, folks miss out on, is they're not realizing that remainder of time left on a boiler unit or an air handler. It's just junk to them, right? It's recycling. So cost segregation is a big one. If I'm no expert in it, but I'm certainly excited to implement it.
Yeah, most people that know about it want to use it.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned Center Health a couple of times. Where are they?
Sutter Health is Northern California. We actually, I just got an email from the United States. So we're in line with the United States Green Building Council out here in Los Angeles and in Orange County. They're coming to us to help them with a few various grant platforms. The EPA put out a wildfire prevention plan. We wrote California's first smoke preparedness plan. And this will be implemented at Sutter Health in Northern California because they've got a season now, 3 to 4 months, where they can't bring in outside air. So hospitals are a bit unique in that you got various rooms that are pressurized or negative pressure, have to have X, Y, and Z installed. It becomes a different monster when you've got particulate matter above a certain threshold in those areas. So we're going back. I don't know if you saw that, Bill, but we're submitting our smoke preparedness plan to United States Green Building Council Los Angeles to help them secure this grant, of which we will be a part of. So a lot of good stuff in the hopper. Sorry, that was an extended answer.
Kevin, how will you deal with capacity issues when you can't fix everybody in the morning?
Yep. It's usually a phased approach. So usually a phased approach when it comes to installation. The beautiful part about this is, so we've got an engineering team of about 22 folks and growing. We've also brought on a group called VCA Green out here, which is another engineering firm. So there's no shortage of engineering. I dealt and deal in operations for the last 2 decades of my career, and I'm always looking at blind spots and where the gap's going to be. My concern initially was, well, how do we satisfy all the labor? Well, you're dealing with a unionized labor workforce when you're working with commercial spaces, right? Typically, Daryl, these guys all have a mechanical firm that they work with. We just partner directly with those folks on the labor side.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah,
that's smart.
Yeah, that's and they know the lay of the land. They may know something that we don't, and we want to go in just a keen partnership with those guys because we don't want them getting egg on their face because they didn't present this to their customer. So we want to be tangential around those relationships and really create a strong bond with those guys, it does two things for us. It secures or gives us more confidence in the actual commissioning of the project. But then think about all the customers that they could potentially go to.
And do you do presentation by Zoom and then you sort of decide later whether you're going to make an in-person?
Yep. Yep. With what we can do on the Cove Tool side, we can get pretty darn far in the conversation. But yeah, we're happy to jump on an airplane after a customer is committed to, an engineering contract or hey, I want a cost segregation study done out here. We get closer to the contract, we have no problem jumping on an airplane.
Well, most people are really comfortable with Zoom now, while 5 years ago, we didn't think anyone would ever be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Now it's a total non-issue, except, sort of near the end of the sale sometimes.
Yeah. Similar scenario.
There is, and I guess you're East Coast capable.
Yes.
There is, I live in a condo building in Roanoke, Virginia. And there's a hospital group here that's a regional hospital group called Carilion, Carilion. And the person that's in charge of that hospital group is a lady by the name of Nancy Agee. And Nancy was actually started out as a nurse. And she was a nurse with my wife, who's also a nurse. So she became CEO of that company, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. They are building a $300 million addition onto their hospital that's about 1,000 yards from me. They have about 20,000 employees. They have, 16, 18 hospitals within this region. And more importantly, maybe, is that 3 years ago, she was chairman of the board of the American Hospital Association.
It doesn't get much better than that.
It
doesn't get much better than that.
When I think of hospitals, colleges, food service distribution centers that have anywhere from 40 to 60% of their floor space consumed with freezer capacity. So I guess those guys would be a target.
We didn't even touch on food security, which is a whole nother topic that we can tackle, Daryl, with a few components. I didn't want to get too in depth in what Pathogen Focus is doing, but they started 25 years ago in Chile, and they're so significant when it comes to waste reduction and actually pathogen mitigation as well, that they can't even be in the same room as a PCR test. They're that effective. It's not ionization, it's an active technology. Look, I've personally looked at probably 20 different active or additive technologies, and none of them pass muster. We don't have any exclusivity. None of these manufacturers pay us to do a darn thing. We've taken it upon ourselves with very dedicated R&D to say we only want to offer the best. If we can provide ROI, there shouldn't be anything less. And that's kind of just giving you a snapshot into how we accept manufacturers into our portfolio. But just this one slide alone, if you just took a snapshot of this slide and sent it to your hospital friend, we'd probably be on the phone with her next week.
Well, that's exactly where I was going. On the food service side, just parenthetically, those guys had to endure the suspension of activity for the restaurant community. So many of those guys are really suffering cost-wise.
Yeah.
Now they're not going out of business anytime soon because they're selling food.
Yeah.
But they are, in terms of their profit year to year, they've had some pretty rough years.
Yeah.
So saving money would be right up their alley. In terms of the hospital group, the question I was going to ask is the one you already answered, which was what can I take her to be or send her that could be the 2x4 that would get her attention?
Yeah. I would probably lead with, there's a innovative group out of California that's specifically focused on reducing costs and improving air quality at the same time for hospitals. And here's one of the ways in which they're doing that. They got many examples just like what this is. This was actually done for a hospital, Daryl. So these figures come from a hospital. So I'm happy to send you a snapshot of this slide. Happy to give you our 2-page slick. That's just a high level overview of our program as a whole. But you talk through what Corel does on the humidification side, and probably I could see it being very easy in a phase 1 approach. It's monitoring, it's change out of humidification, and it's pathogen focus. Now, I don't know where they sit on the sustainability side, but any one of their goals, my guess is we could speak to.
And they have, by the way, they raise a lot of money for their foundation and all that sort of stuff. It's been in the papers multiple times how much money they lost during this whole COVID thing. They're a nonprofit hospital.
Yeah. So is Sutter Health.
Most of the hospitals in the American Hospital Association are nonprofits. I don't know what percentage that is, and I don't know that it really matters.
Yeah. We didn't even touch on some of the utility dollars that are out there right now. PG&E is giving away up to $4 million at 0% for anything energy efficient. Not anything, but everything that we do sits underneath that category. So 0% loan to clients for doing things like I've just shared with you today. So I guess that would be another monetary opportunity.
Right. And if you, just as an academic question, if I went to Google and typed in a keyword that describes your business, what would it be?
Well, we've coined net zero indoor air quality. I would say
clean air, maybe.
Yeah, indoor air quality.
Okay. Yeah, I would think that's a good one. Sure.
Yep. Indoor air quality. Now, again, historically, you'd have to sacrifice. If you wanted indoor air quality, it cost you an arm and a leg. If it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, that means that you're pushing more power through there. Because the only way to get away from pathogens historically was by diluting them. So
you are now, if I understand correctly, you're bringing in air. You're killing everything in the air, so to speak, quote unquote.
Yep.
Then when you exhaust it, then it's really, really clean air.
You're only exhausting a small amount. So with what Invarid does, it allows you to reduce the amount of outside air that you're bringing in. So when you reduce the amount of outside air that you're bringing in, your fan speeds go to nothing because you're just pressurizing the building. So what you can now do is keep more of the air that you're cleaning. And as it cycles through our system, it just gets cleaner and cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. So the analogy that I like to use is the way in which buildings operate today would be if we all jumped in the pool and got out of that pool, and you'd have to drain the water, fill it up, and then retreat that water every time somebody got into the pool. It's the same way in which buildings operate right now with outside air. It's the exact same way.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
That's a great metaphor for that. I guess my last question is, I guess it would help your equipment last longer.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a big point to that. Much less stress on the machinery. From a new building perspective, if we went to that hospital and said you could reduce the size of the equipment that you need to install while achieving the same goal, I'm pretty sure they'd listen. Because if we're not treating as much air, right, you don't need as many machines to do so. If you don't need as much water in the cooling tower to help with cooling loads or heating loads, you can shut one of them off, or you can only install one of them. So there's a first cost capital reduction that we can speak to with new buildings.
And so you do existing buildings as well as new
Yeah.
construction.
Yes.
So that brings in the architectural design professionals.
Yep. We work hand in hand with those folks. We'd be a design, they call it design assist, right? If they bring in outside entities for specialty things like what we do, we would be in a design assist relationship with them. But architects would be great. I mean, we've just been so darn busy that we haven't carved out time to focus on that particular industry, but we need to.
Kevin, can you click on slide 9 for a second?
Sure thing.
I mean, you look at the lineup of clients, go back to that smaller size. I'm taking screenshots here, so I didn't get that one before, but look at the lineup of clients that are using these technologies. These are not small organizations.
Yeah.
I mean, they do their due diligence. They've vetted and tested and double tested these technologies. What's unique about you all is you're combining them into I would call it a reciprocal offering, where it's multi-layered, right?
Yeah.
And what is it? So other than representing these different technologies, what is it that Sterile Safe Solutions does that is unique or that sets you apart from everyone else?
Our people and our engineering teams. So whether it's our engineers all have deep backgrounds in net zero and indoor air quality. We've got the backing of the United States Green Building Council here in Los Angeles. We've got an IAQ forensic scientist that was an ASHRAE committee member. I've got a gentleman named Joe Murphy who worked at Turner Construction and is a lead AP, an actual professor teaching lead at a local college here. So it's really our people at the end of the day. If a mechanical firm went and got their hands on this package, it's not that they couldn't put something together, but they probably wouldn't get the same result.
Understood.
Kevin, one last question from me, because I don't want to dominate your time. I have a friend who's been in the architectural business for 40 years. He just recently retired, but before he retired, he transitioned his architectural firm from being just merely an architectural firm to being a real estate development consultant.
Mm-hmm.
So he has encountered and developed relationships with people all over the country that are in the real estate development business.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems like a good relationship to build upon.
Be fantastic. Yeah, it's a great target. Be a great target. It's going to take a lot of us. We're not looking to take the whole pie. Everybody wins. The architectural firm wins. The mechanical firm wins. Most importantly, the customer wins. Right? You do one or two of these. If we just did one hospital, Daryl, with the significant impact that just one or two technologies have, they're going to ask, what else do we have? And then you're probably going to do all 13 of them.
Sure. I agree.
And then their competitors going to ask you, what are they doing? How did you do it? And everyone in their association is going to call you up next. I mean, the potential ripple effects of this Sterile are in the billions. This is a multi-billion-dollar project. And, I want to just make a point referring to the income potential here. Anyone who's looking at this and working with us in this project, Kevin and Bill are maybe the founders and their partners in the company, and they've assembled this really extraordinary team. But I'm impressed by the fact that you understand that it all starts with sales. If the doors aren't opening and you're not talking to anybody, it doesn't matter how good the technology is.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also, to your credit, you're also not greedy, and you're very generous in the compensation plan you've shared with us. I mean, we have the potential to share in the profits of this almost at a level of a partner in the company. You made that point the other day, Kevin, and that really struck me. because it's true. We do the same approach in our business. We give away much more to the field than we keep as a company. Of course, we don't have the same overhead you do. You have to cover all the costs, of course, but I really appreciate that, just that that mindset and that approach. You understand the need for sales. You don't have to make everything to be happy. You're not greedy. You're building this for the long haul. You know, this is a generational company, I believe, unless you're going to build it and sell it, which if you do, we want a little piece of that, but you know.
Yeah,
we can talk about that, but yeah, there's
I think
there's a lot of pieces to this that are really appealing to us. So
thank you. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice that has really started to pay off, because when we do get paid, we get to keep so much more, right? We didn't, you know, we've got access to quite a bit of money. Just haven't needed it yet. Now, when we go out and we have, you know, some sort of growth happen, which is looking to be right around the corner, you know, it may change, but we can always stay lean. You know, we've got engineering partners. You don't necessarily need to bring in that overhead. So it's just been a lot of sweat equity that's allowed us to be generous. And I think that's just kind of who we are as people too. Bill is not only the CEO and we're partners, but he's a heck of a mentor when it comes to talking about outcome versus income, which really struck me when I initially was brought on board just about 3 years ago now. So we see a long runway where everybody wins. We all work hard, play hard. Bill's got an adage where he shares that, you know, we all bring food to the table and we leave with more than we came with. And again, society wins, humanity wins. We're doing the Lord's work here.
Yeah, it's win-win-win-win-win.
You really are.
I just want to know what all the awards behind you are for, Bill. Is that your production work?
Production work, mostly representing manufacturers, taking brands to market, videos, infomercials, commercials, websites, campaigns, social sites. But you know, I just want to make a comment. Daryl, today, you've been astutely tuned into things that we've really heretofore never heard anybody be so informed. I'm somewhat intrigued.
Yeah, certainly.
Where'd you come from?
First meeting. Yeah.
Do what?
Where'd you come? You're an alien of some kind. Come on. Are you CIA? You spying on us?
I just keep my ears open. That's all I can tell you.
Well, the things that you were commenting on are so advanced and so astute and so keen to the future. This perpetual prosperity paradigm everybody's talking about is interesting, because we actually have a wheel of what this looks like coming out in our book. But everybody wins. So it's jobs, it's industry, it's manufacturing, it's investments, it's growth of a company. Every aspect just keeps going around, achieving the net zero goals, healthier society, just keeps going, but it keeps going. It never stops. It doesn't ever need to stop. You could convert the entire society locally, nationally, and globally, and it would still keep going, and everyone's making money. But we're in an interesting industrial, commercial, enterprise sector where it's not very easy to replicate this. As Kevin said, it's the people, it's engineering, it's these really bold, large relationships. And what we studied was what was the biggest culprit, because you can talk about all these greenhouse gases and all these things you want to absorb and do and be a part of. But if we don't do it with China, Africa, and India, it's mute to do it anywhere else on the planet, because they're 70+% of the pollutants of the whole planet. So we're going to start here. We have big interest kind of internationally right now, but more on the development side and future business growth. Right now, it's these small concentric circles. But you're going to hear this thing with us a lot called hashtag 2023. When we launch our book and we go out with our publicists.
Tipping point.
Forgive me. Hashtag tipping point 2023. This is right here, right now. It's going to be inbound very, very soon. We could go to one conference, for example, the SHRM conference, which is a society of HR managers, and they're located all over the globe. You could do this because of all these other things. I mean, just while you were talking, to Frank's curiosity, one more ROI, which was sustainability, is a huge ROI metric for us, as Kevin was talking about. If you could downsize the equipment and use them less to 100% capacity, what the pandemic did is you put on tighter and tighter and tighter filters. The energy is used more, the motors use more, the systems are more in fatigue. It's a massive area in soft cost by reducing maintenance and increasing sustainability, which is a real cost. We have several projects and people in Dubai, but throughout the UAE and Saudi and India, the weather temperature delta, we call it delta T in the industry, which is the variant of temperature, positive and negative. So you're sitting at a building that's 68 to 70 degrees, but outdoors in Dubai can be 105 to 148 and 90% humidity. So if you have a 100-story building with 10,000 people in it, the AC can't go off because it's life or death. Inside that building, it'd be 220. So sustainability has a real ROI factor and has huge substance in all these conversations. So we could do ROI conversations in the soft cost category by reducing fatigue, increasing, all kinds of cognitive awareness, reducing sick days. We could keep going. The list go on and on, which we list in our book. But the three main are the focus. And so when we talk about what we do, it's that medical grade pathogen mitigation, achieving your net zero goals, and reducing costs at the spectrum of any facility. There's nobody you can't talk to about that pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post-pandemic into the endemic stage of this.
Yep. Hey, Bill, on another note, if Patrick and I are going as part of your team to the SHRM conference, we're going to need polos. I'll take an extra large, please. Thank you.
SHRM is a great conference. It's also enormously expensive. It's the only conference I know they don't give out free exhibit badges. So we're looking into booths now and what they charge, but they're a very close-knit society and they don't let anybody in as looky-loos. They make it pretty cost preventative. So we'll look at all these things, but you said you've been there before. They're a very close-knit society because it's compliance within HR of every enterprise. They're very, very strict. They're very, very focused on details, and they're not glitzy and they're not glam and they're not this. It is the show where I've seen the most amount of tchotchkes I've ever seen in my entire life at any conference.
My kids will love that. Then anytime I go to a conference, the kids always want the tchotchkes. So I'm excited. They'll be excited.
Kevin, the
guys, we have 4 minutes left. I just wanted to be respectful of everybody's time. Let's go around the horn one last time, and then we can sign off from here and pick it back up next week. So,
okay.
Gerald, I wanted to satisfy any additional questions that you had, sir.
Yeah, can I ask 2 more questions?
Please.
One is one of my friends has developed a cybersecurity platform for hospitals, and it sort of eliminates hacking and all that. He's a brilliant guy, and he hired a guy who's been in the hospital business all his life, and so he's on a first name basis with a lot of folks in that sector. So he could be helpful. So we'll talk about that more specifically later. And then one of the guys I worked for in my career in the food service business, then after the food service business, after he vacated that, he and his brother, they became the largest land developer in the United States. And so they're developing, for the most part, they're developing apartments. At one time, he owned roughly, $500 million worth of apartments. So is this applicable to apartment complexes?
It just depends on the parts are. Now, it just depends on the infrastructure is what I'm going to say. So I'm not going to say no. It's also, what is the narrative, right? What is the goal? What would be the goal? Are they looking to offer a really, really clean building? that
No.
we can do all day long. You know, from a cost savings perspective, I'm going to say yes. And if we've got something that large, there's a couple of things that come to mind right now, to where,
My first thought is obsolescence of equipment.
yes, it just depends on how the apartments are being designed. Are they going towards split systems where every apartment's got its own AC unit? Do they have a big trunking system that comes down that branches off and provides heating and cooling
Yeah,
to those
understand.
areas? You know, so
may
those are
be,
some of the things we need to know. But we can take a
It may
look.
be
take a look at it.
marginal. So we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
you know, we're really good at not saying no.
I'm just always curious.
Yeah, I'm happy to brainstorm with you. I'll put Patrick, if you want to send out. Yes, I can. And
I'll send the NDA to Daryl. I'm going to forward this video to a handful of other connectors that we know, and we'll get NDAs from all of them. One thing we're waiting from you is our whatever you want us to use to track our contacts. That's one thing that's really important, Daryl. If you make connection with someone, we need to know who they are, who they're with, and get it on our list so we can have basically first rights to them. There are others out there trying to sell this product or some of these products, and so we want to make sure that we have documented those connections that we make.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kevin,
you may have rep overlap, but they're not going at this as a program, and that's okay. There's workarounds to that. That's not a challenge at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're out
Kevin,
of
real
time,
quick,
Frank.
high-rise condos would come into play, correct?
Yeah, again, Frank, it just depends on the infrastructure.
Because everything's going up in Orange County, you know that.
Yeah, Orange County, you know, that play would probably be indoor air quality. I could see those high-rise condos using that as a campaign to say, hey, look at the air quality that we've got in here. So it wouldn't be so much, you know, on the cost savings benefit, but there's certainly benefit when it comes to IAQ.
Got it. Thank you.
Branding is what it's all about, right?
They're going to
Talking
spend.
about
They're going to spend the money on something new and shiny anyway. We can just help be transparent with that. This is all we look at is indoor air quality. It's got to just have an energy efficiency component to it for us to entertain adding it to our program.
Yeah.
Well,
Kevin, we have to get you with John Santoyo because he's got all the Indian casinos going down on that battery of his.
Are they national, Frank?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hospitals, I'm sorry, casinos couldn't be a better target.
Yep.
Well, and I'll just close by saying, I know you got to go, Kevin. We appreciate your time. Thanks for listening and watching, everybody, if you're watching this video. But, you know, I come back to the recruiting and retention question. It's the number one thing we hear from clients. They're concerned about labor. They're concerned about cost. They're concerned about recruiting and retaining employees. Well, the same thing applies to companies and employees, applies to businesses and customers, whether it's restaurants and patrons, hospitals and patients. They want people to feel comfortable coming to them and be attracted to their location or their organizations. And once they come, they want them to stay. And so this plays into that. They can use it in a number of different ways, but strictly from a branding standpoint and advertising standpoint about why they are safe, why they are better, why the quality of living will be higher, whatever the case might be. Those are pretty big selling points, because now we're talking about people's fears and comfort levels and et cetera, et cetera. Start getting into the emotion of it. That's pretty heady stuff. So, we're out of time. We appreciate your time, guys. Thanks for being so generous, and hopefully we can just show this to a few more people and not make you have to do this over and over again.
No, I think it's important to connect. And Daryl, I put my number directly in the chat if you wanted to talk or kind of brainstorm over some additional questions. Patrick can send that to you as well.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Daryl, thanks for being here too, my friend.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed it.
Take care, guys.
Wonderful. Have a great Easter, everyone.
You guys have a good weekend.
Thank
Happy
you.
Easter.
Too.
Thank you,
Happy
guys.
Easter. See ya.
Bye-bye.
You as well. Happy Easter, happy Passover, whatever you celebrate. That's the main reason we're here, right?
Yes, Patrick. You be good. Thanks for inviting
care,
me to this.
You bet. Take care, bud.
See ya.